Today we're going to talk about the C story, also known as the subplot or the minor arc, and what a crucial role that plays in the movie Lakeview Terrace. This is Copper Beach Film Club. Every single movie and television show that you watch or book you read comes down to the A, B, and C stories. They represent different narrative threads or subplots that interact in meaningful ways. So we'll start with the A story. The A story is the main plot. It's the primary narrative, and it focuses mostly on the protagonist's central goal or conflict. It drives the main arc of the movie, and it's often tied to the genre or premise that movie is set in. Then you have the B story, which is the subplot, and that often involves secondary characters, complementary storyline, and it really just adds depth to story A. So there's two things going on at once, right? It's literally a relationship-based and an insightful storyline that just adds that extra layer. But then there's the C plot. Again, it's the subplot, it's the minor arc, and that story is often hidden within the narrative thread, but in the end, it really is the force that's pushing everything together. You might recognize these as deadlines in the movie, and usually they're set in movies, they're usually established within the first 10 to 15 minute mark, okay? So a C story really focuses on side events. It really ties the A and B stories together and resolves those small little narrative threads that scenes are comprised of. So what does this have to do with Lakeview Terrace? Well, I think Lakeview Terrace did this so well. And yes, it is 2025. And yes, I just saw this movie for the first time 2 days ago. But this is what I loved so much about this movie. So Lakeview Terrace hit theaters on September 19th, 2008 from Sony Pictures in association with Screen Gems. Runs about an hour and 50 minutes, was shot with a budget of $20 million and grossed $44 million worldwide, making it, I guess, a modest return, modestly profitable. It's directed by Neil LaBute, who you would also recognize his work from things like The Wicker Man, Death at a Funeral, the TV show Billions, and he also wrote American Gigolo. But let's talk about who this film stars. There's Samuel L. Jackson, there's Patrick Wilson, and there's Kerry Washington. But there's one other character that's not billed, and that is the California wildfires. That is your C story. That is your subplot. That is your minor arc. And when you're talking about a movie like Lakeview Terrace, which explores themes of morality and chaos, destructiveness, evil intentions, like what better to represent all of those themes than a wildfire that's ferocious and out of control and coming for them no matter what they do. So let's look at the A story, right? Going back on, it's the primary story. This primary story there is a very relatable story. It's not very hard. It's pretty simple. It is Kerry Washington and Patrick Wilson relocating, moving into the neighborhood. They're newlyweds. He's starting a new job at a grocery store. I believe he's some kind of a corporate person at a grocery store, and they moved there because they're expanding their territories. And she wants to have a baby. The father disapproves of him, and they're an interracial couple, so most people do disapprove of them. Again, early 2000s. And it's a basic story. There's really no need to ever tune into this movie unless something magnificent were to happen, something spectacular, something remarkable. And in this movie, because it's a thriller, they're going to move in next door to a disapproving LAPD officer played by Samuel L. Jackson. He just cannot get over it. And I like that the movie starts out with Samuel L. Jackson. It doesn't start with Patrick Wilson and Kerry Washington. We start with a day in his life. And why do we do that? Because what's most important to know is about Samuel L. Jackson. This is his world. This is his cul-de-sac. He's raising his kids by himself, and he's appointed himself the neighborhood patrol, right? He's that kind of person. The real story begins when his world is knocked off its balance. His catalyst in the movie is when Kerry Washington and Patrick Wilson move into the neighborhood because he's king of that cul-de-sac. But now there's these outsiders coming in and he disapproves of them, okay? So there you go. There's your B story. Now they're going to move into the neighborhood. Patrick Wilson's going to go start his job. Kerry Washington's trying to have a family. She's trying to have a baby. That story is now impacted by the nosy neighbor who disapproves. At around the 14-minute mark of the movie, this is when the first engagement takes place. This is where Samuel L. Jackson comes over and initiates and sizes up Patrick Wilson, gets his little jabs in, just kind of test the waters a little bit. And so now everybody's kind of like, oh my God, because the wife's at home going, when are you going to give me a baby? Patrick Wilson, the husband's at home going, I don't even know how long this job's going to last. I don't know if we can afford this house. I don't know where we're even going to be in 6 months. And now you got to throw in this subplot, the B story. Samuel L. Jackson comes into the mix and he's disapproving and he's going to start messing with them now verbally, psychologically, and then it turns physical eventually, right? So the real special thing about this movie is that it's very character driven. You're seeing people at their breaking points. They're boiling. It's just at what point are everyone just gonna blow, right? So that right there could go on forever. That whole situation could develop and evolve over time, years, decades, however you could tell that story. But there's a catch. It's a movie and it has to get resolved one way or another. It is out of their control now because it's up to the wildfires. And the idea of a wildfire influencing the main plot as the C story, it's used more of like, there's multiple ways you could use it, but I believe in this movie they use it as a catalyst for resolution. So this is the kind of event that's going to deeply impact the resolution. I understand that the wildfires are kind of on the nose a little bit, but I also like it because it's used more of like a catalyst for resolution. It directly impacts both the A and B stories now. It's like, hey, no matter what happens, this is coming. It's over. It has to end. It's literally foreshadowing and symbolism. And the wildfires approaching means two different things. For the family of Patrick Wilson and Kerry Washington, it means this isn't your home. You don't belong here. You're going to have to go. Eventually, you're going to have to go. For Samuel L. Jackson, it's you think you own this. You think you're the king of this cul-de-sac. Well, you're not meant to be here for much longer either. This will never work because no matter who moves in, you're going to make their life a living hell. So again, the purpose of a C story is to complement and enhance the A and B stories without overshadowing them. And it adds variety, it reinforces themes, balances the tone, and deepens the narrative of this world. And most moviegoers don't think twice when they see stuff like that. But it's important for us as writers and directors and editors and filmmakers to understand its impact on every level. And so I just wanted to point that out because I do think it's a good movie. I do think it's worth the 4 stars that Roger Ebert gave it. But that is the thing I would say I enjoyed the most about the movie was the use of the C story because it added to my anxiety as a viewer. I'm sitting there, I'm like, well, this isn't good. Well, this isn't good. Well, that's kind of weird. And then the fire comes along and I'm like, well, this doesn't help. So I think it was done very effectively. I'd also like to take a second to point out something that I really, truly appreciated about this movie. And I didn't even know how much I appreciated it until the credits started rolling. And that is the idea that they never really left the cul-de-sac. They never really left the set. Those are usually referred to as the hero locations. That's the central place where the most important things happen, and that's where the story is really focused and grounded at. If you're watching Lord of the Rings, it's the Shire. If you watch The Shining, it's the Overlook Hotel. In Jurassic Park, it's literally Jurassic Park. There's really no need to ever leave there because nothing really important. If you ever leave there as a screenwriter or a director and you go outside, which they do a couple times in Lakeview Terrace, it's like it has to be for a good reason. So in most of the scenes when they do leave the cul-de-sac, it's usually for Samuel L. Jackson and it's down on the streets of LA where he deals with crime and it's God, that's so stressful. Jesus. Because it's not just about the home. It's what everybody brings home with them. I think the best thing they ever did in this movie, again, I didn't notice this until the credits rolled, is that the reason they even moved there in the first place is because Patrick Wilson mentions that he is there to oversee a grocery store chain. And I love that they never went to work with Patrick Wilson. You can only imagine it. You don't need to go there. There's no reason to go to work with Patrick Wilson. I think, myself included, a lot of amateur screenwriters or not experienced screenwriters would say, well, let's explore what work looks like for him. Let's go there and let's have him deal with an angry customer, or let's have him just kind of air his grievances to his buddy at work or one of his employees. And it's like, there's no need for that. That doesn't add to anything. Who cares? I also think I'm the kind of writer that might explore that in a draft or when exploring the scenes. Like, maybe it does. Maybe there is a way. Maybe Samuel L. Jackson could come into the grocery store and start some shit. But I really appreciated that they did that they did not include his work. You just imagine what it's like. And I would imagine that the screenwriters explored that when developing the character and when he's walking into a scene and when he's leaving a scene. But other than that, I think kudos, because I don't know if I would have done that. I probably would have done that. Where I am right now, I probably would have went to the grocery store. So that's just something to think about as we're writing and as we're developing and as we're creating is, you don't always need to go to the grocery store. Thanks a lot for tuning in, and go watch more movies.